Hey, mathematicians, in our last lesson, we talked about what relations are and that they're basically a set of ordered pairs and that you can display them a couple different ways. To build on that, we're going to talk about a specific type of relation called a function. And a function has exactly one output for every input. That's one output for every input. And so we're going to spend today's lesson talking about how to identify what a function is and then how to use a function. So there are different forms of functions. Again, we referred to this when we did graphing stories. We're coming back to it again. We're going to keep coming back to it. You can represent functions in 4 ways: verbally, algebraically, a table, and a graph. And to determine if something is a function, these are some different cues in the red. If it's verbal, can you create a t-table for it? And when you create that t-table, is there exactly one output for every input? So you're piggybacking these two together, all right? So can you create a t-table for this scenario? If you can, is there one output for every input? So in other words, is every input listed only once? When you look at it algebraic, this variable and this variable needs to be to the first power. You can't have any squares, you won't find any roots, and you won't find 2 variables multiplied by each other. You just won't. With a graph, we use something called the vertical line test. So vertical goes up and down. What the vertical line test says is if you can draw vertical lines and only cross the line at one spot, you're good to go. You're good to go. So these are the different forms of functions. Feel free to replay and record in your packet that information. So what we want to do is determine whether each of these are a function. Now, just one side note, from here to the end of Unit 2, I've added some slides into your notes presentation. So there might be some slides that aren't in the packet that I gave to you in September. Since then, the 8th grade math team has gotten together and we've made some adjustments. So my apologies for that. We're all doing the best we can, and we decided we needed to add a little bit more from what we initially thought in September when we created these packets. So I appreciate your grace. Feel free to write it down on a sheet of notebook paper and attach it. I think you can write it on the back page of your packet. I don't think there's anything there. But we did decide we need to add a little bit more to your practice than what we originally were planning to do. So we need to determine whether each of these relations, and a relation is a set of ordered pairs, if each of these sets of ordered pairs is a function or not. Does each input have exactly one output? So when I look here, I see an input of 2 and an input of 2. With this input of 2, I have an output of 1. With this input of 2, I have an output of -2. That means that my input has 2 different outputs, which means it's not a function. So not a function. When I look at this map, is this a function? -2 has one output. 0 has 1, 2 outputs. So 2 outputs means that this one is not a function. My input has 2 separate outputs. When I look at this t-table, -7 has one output. -4 has one output. 2 has one output, and so does 5. So this one is a function because each input has one output. Looking at the next map, 2 has one output, 3 has 2 outputs. Because 3 has 2 outputs, It is not a function. Not a function at all. And looking at the last one, 4 has one output, 2 has one output, 0 has one output, -2 has one output. This is a function. Now, if you're at home and you're like, but come on, there's all 2's for the outputs. Come on. You said one output for every input. That's true. Even though these are all the same, it still has only one output for this number. All of these can be the same. That's okay. What's not okay is if these were the same. 4 can only give me a 2. 2 can only give me a 2. 0 can only give me a 2. -2 can only give me a 2. This is determining whether they're a function or not. In our next lesson, we're going to talk about function notation. So stay tuned. Stop recording.